California is one of the world's testing grounds for autonomous vehicles, with all deployments taking place in San Francisco. But how far can we let innovation advance before setting rules?
The federal government's role in the United States is to regulate the safe operation of the equipment of vehicles, and they do that with federal motor vehicle safety standards. So any vehicle that is sold to the public here in the United States has to meet certain federal motor vehicle safety standards. In contrast, here in the States, we focus on the safe operation of those vehicles. We do that through the licensing and the registration, traffic laws, the operation on public roads, how those vehicles operate. So we work with all the manufacturers that are operating here in the state of California. There's currently 30 manufacturers who are authorized to test and to deploy that autonomous technology here in the state of California. So my team at the Department of Motor Vehicles oversees the permitting. We develop the policies and the regulations associated with the operation of those vehicles. Autonomous technology is technology that has the capability to do all of the driving tasks without any expectation of a human driver. And we created our first set of regulations in 2014. That first set of regulations included testing with a safety driver. So in 2018, we had the next evolution of regulations here in California, and that included removing the safety driver, so testing without a safety driver. And it also ushered in what we call in California commercial deployment. So by commercial deployment, we mean when a company is ready to move from testing and to start making their technology available to the public. They can charge a fee for delivery, they can charge a fee for passenger service, they can start selling their autonomous technologies to the public. So that's called a deployment authorization.
Over 5 years of experience now, from the early cruise and then Waymo operations, the testing phase, and then in 2023, the commercial deployment phase. That was pretty bumpy. I will be honest that it was not smooth. Since that time, there's been a maturation and improvement in the technology.
Autonomous mobility has become ubiquitous in a city like San Francisco. What do local associations that encounter driverless vehicles on a daily basis think about this?
There are many members of our organization that really support autonomous vehicles because they think that they will be far safer in providing mobility services than, say, Uber and Lyft, whose drivers tend to be distracted, tend to not drive very safely, tend to do things like running stop signs. And autonomous vehicles go the speed limit, and they'll stop at stop signs and stoplights, and our members really like that, and we like that as well.
I think there's some really amazing features built into these cars, and again, like I said, Waymo is really the one I'm familiar with, built into the cars that make them extremely blind friendly, friendly to the deaf community, friendly to anybody who has a service animal. Getting a ride when you have a service animal is almost impossible when it comes to Uber or Lyft or a taxi. That disappears with autonomous vehicles. So there's some really, really great features and great ways that they didn't even think of, I think. Like if you have a child who has difficulty dealing with strangers or with anxiety with changes, that can be really, not having a driver can be really useful.
J'habite à Los Angeles depuis 15 ans et je suis cycliste et piétonne principalement. En tant que cycliste, je me fais doubler régulièrement par des voitures qui me doublent bien trop vite et bien trop près, dont les comportements sont dangereux. Et je me suis rendu compte que finalement, les seuls ou les rares qui respectaient le code de la route et qui étaient prévisibles, c'était les voitures autonomes. Au stop, elles s'arrêtent systématiquement, elles sont prévisibles. On peut savoir comment va réagir une voiture autonome. Une voiture conduite par un automobiliste, ça crée souvent des dangers et des grosses frayeurs. D'avoir au moins une proportion de véhicules autonomes en ville amène plus de sécurité pour les cyclistes et les piétons.
Sometimes the autonomous vehicles can be a little bit unpredictable because their behavior is not like human drivers all the time. And that can sometimes cause a little bit of counterintuitive danger because somebody on a bike might not be able to predict what the autonomous vehicle is going to do, and that could cause something like a solo crash by the person on the bike because they think that the vehicle is going to do one thing and it does something else. Another problem that we have encountered recently is that the autonomous vehicles are actually not programmed to do the safest behavior that we would like them to do. Sometimes they will stop in bike lanes, which technically might be seen as normal for a pickup and drop off, but it is certainly not the safest thing to do. To us, that's really frustrating because the technology is not living up to the promise to make streets safer for the most vulnerable road users.
So we do see smoother pickup and drop off activity in terms of the behavior of the vehicles. They used to stop in lane, and now they're being able to pull over to drop off passengers correctly at the curb. We also need more pickup and drop off zones, white zones. And that's not just for autonomous vehicles, that is for all road users. There's a lot of competition for curb space.
In San Francisco alone, there's 100,000 people with disabilities of some sort. You know, that's a big demographic. Where they have not met our needs yet is they're not wheelchair accessible. Actually, it's not that we've involved Waymo. You're asking me if we've involved Waymo. They've involved us, and that's really one of the main reason that we've been so enthusiastic is they very early on contacted us and were like, we don't know what to do, can you help us? 5 years from now, if we meet again, we will be meeting again looking at, it is my hope and my belief, at a wheelchair accessible AV. Now, it may not be accessible for every wheelchair user because people are different and their experiences and their bodies are different, but I think in terms of a large percentage, I think a design will emerge that is accessible for most wheelchair users, and I look forward to that day.
Our agency did research in 2016 and 17, a picture of TNCs in San Francisco, and they were not at the edges. They were not just going to and from transit hubs. They were downtown. 1 in every 4 vehicles downtown was a Lyft or Uber. And this is an area that is our most precious road space that we prioritize bicycles and buses and pedestrians, of course travelers by car and truck, but we really need to keep that flowing efficiently. I wish we had more data, and I wish that the data were more complete, timely, and transparent. Even today, there's only been 1 year released publicly of those reports. We need that to be available at the county or city breakdown. Once a year statewide report doesn't give us enough detail so that anyone can calculate safety rate, disengagement rate, malfunction rate, vehicle miles traveled, and those are the things that we continue to talk at all levels with the regulators and with the providers themselves so that we can have an accurate picture of what is happening in our city.
I think autonomous vehicles have a lot of potential to make our streets safer, but we have a history in San Francisco and California in general of not having enough regulation of new technologies. For example, the recent history with ride-hail companies like Uber and Lyft, those had a lot of promise of reducing dependence on cars and car ownership, but the actual impact was to greatly increase the number of cars on our streets and increase congestion and decrease safety for people who are using totally carbon zero transportation like biking. And so we are excited to see what autonomous vehicles could do to increase safety and livability in San Francisco. But right now we think that legislation and the regulation is not there to actually achieve that vision yet.
We have a small, modest ride-hail fee in San Francisco that was passed by the voters in 2019. It's known as the TNC tax. It's 3.25% on solo ride-hail trips originating in San Francisco. It does apply to autonomous vehicles. For a shared trip, it's only 1.5%, so it's less for a shared trip or an EV trip. So it's a small amount of revenue, very modest, but it's a big policy step towards saying, hey, we are all part of the solution, but if there are problems, we can find ways to mitigate them.